Hello. How are you guys today? Hi, Jeannel King here, and I am a stick figure strategist and graphic facilitator. I am also an author, and this is why I'm hosting this first Draw Forth session on drawing forth the book inside of you, because I am a big believer in if you've experienced something, you may as well share that experience with other people so that they can learn and be inspired and get motivated and get off the pot and start doing those things that they want to do and hopefully learn from other people's experiences to make it easier too. So, a couple of things. If you are joining us live, please go ahead and hit the mute button when you join in, just to keep any background noise levels under control. And then also at the end of this call, there is a red hang up button at the top of your screen. So you would just click on that and that will disconnect you from the call as well. Welcome to the people who are live streaming, and welcome to the folks who are watching this after the fact, but still curious to hear what's going on. I'm excited to see you here. So, this is my book that really is driving this whole thing. And also, this is why it's Draw Forth, right? And it's the 4th of the month. But I also like cheesy humor. So it took, a lot of people after I wrote my book, they were saying, how did you do it? Because I've been meaning to write a book for a long time, and I don't know, I'm getting stuck. I'm not sure what to write. I don't know how to approach it. And I thought, the best way to answer these questions would be all at the same time on one of these calls. So that's what's prompting this today. And just as a technology point, when we were doing technology tests yesterday and today, there was a bit of a delay from the words coming out of my mouth and matching up to what's happening on the screen. So if you can bear with me on that, that would be fantastic. And what I'm hoping will help with this is me switching to this other camera, yay, where you can just listen to what I have to say, and I'll be drawing along the way and showing you different things, and hopefully that will make it an easier experience too. So, when I'm thinking about what to share with this call, because I know we only have 45 minutes and we have tons of great questions to talk about, I thought we would approach it from a concentric circles kind of perspective. And if you're familiar with Simon Sinek, I'm a huge fan. He talks about starting with why, moving out to how, and then what is basically how it happens to manifest. So we're going to be focusing on why are you writing a book? And then how are you writing? And then what you're going to be writing. And all of this is coming through the lens of my experience and my perspective. So take what I say with a grain of salt. This is, my experience writing my book, and your experience may vary. So, but hopefully there will be something helpful here. When I was looking at the questions that everybody sent in for this event, there were 5 basic themes that seemed to come up. And so we're going to be hitting why. There was a lot of conversation going on about why write a book in the first place. And then there were some questions that fell into a category that I thought of as executing vision. So you've got a vision for what you want to see created. How do you actually go about that higher level process? Then a lot of the questions focused on this third area, process. From there, we'll probably start touching on to something a little more granular, looking at content. And quite a few people wanted to know, what lessons did I learn writing this book? what do I, what would I have liked to have known when I started that might have been helpful moving forward? So learned, there we go. So that's what we're going to be focusing on during this call, and this is all question driven. So the folks who completed the survey prior to this, all of your questions, that's what we're talking today. So good job. Thank you for filling that out. All right, so let's go to a new page. And let's just dive right on in. So the first question comes from awesome person by the name of Morrow. And I thought that this was a great question to start off with because he is really hitting to the point, for what this whole call is driving at, I think. And it's the most important question to be able to answer if you were writing your own book. And so here's what he wrote. There are a lot of great things to read out there. Why write yet another book? So it's that big why question, right? Let's go to the paper. So to me, the why really does drive everything else that you do in this world. And when you write a book, you've got to be able to get really clear on what it is that you want to bring forth into this world. And it's one thing to write a book because, oh, there's a really good market for it, or hey, this is a hot topic right now, I should get in on that trend and write a book about that. And certainly sketchnoting, visual communication, that has been on the rise in the last few years, and there are tons of great books out there. Mike Rohde, Sonny Brown, Dan Roan, one of my personal favorites, David Sibbett. There are all these people who have put out great stuff. Who am I to add anything to that, right? I mean, it's kind of ballsy of me to think that I would have something to contribute. No. You absolutely have something to contribute to this conversation. Just because there are great books out there on a subject doesn't mean that everything that has been said about the subject needs to be said. And the reason why I believe that's the case is because you have not contributed your voice yet. There is tremendous, people talk about adding value to a product or a service, because I'm a business owner, so I think about these types of things. And when you think about writing a book, what is the value that you're adding to the conversation? And you might think, oh, I don't really know what my value is. Well, that's something to sit down and think about, because the value that you're bringing is really the heart and soul of your book. And the heart and soul of your book is you. It's your voice. It's your insights. It's your take on, it's your 2 cents to add to this conversation. And so, yes, there are lots of books out there on a subject, but your book on a subject is not yet out there. And so if you are able to get really clear on your why is it that you have to write this book in the first place, that's going to drive the message and the value for your readership. Because just as you are here with a voice, there are people out there who need to hear your voice. And so who cares if there are already books out there on the subject? Your book is not yet out there. So when we think about the value that you're adding by writing from yourself, with your perspective, your insight, and your voice, get really clear on the why. So for me, and this actually is going to start taking us into the second topic, the executing vision topic, I think. For me, I had to write this book because I wrote this one, What You Draw Is Good Enough. It's a free little ebook that folks can download from my website. And the reason why I wrote What You Draw is Good Enough is because everyone after a project, when I would do a graphic facilitation project, they would come up and say, wow, what you do, it's so cool. I wish I could do what you do, but I can't draw. And I had a lot to say in response to that, because I believe that's not true. I believe that what you draw is good enough, and please stop telling yourself that it's not. So instead of having individual conversations time and again with folks, I thought, I could reach more people, I could touch more lives if I wrote, this little puppy right there. And this guy took a month for me to write and put out from start to finish, with illustrating it, laying it out. It was a 34-page ebook, real little Valentine for people. But as I was writing this book, I realized there is so much more that I want to tell people about how they can show up in the world and how they can choose to work, and how they can, yes, they can draw at ideas, but you know what they can really do with this is draw forth the best in people and the best in themselves. So it went from this tiny book idea, this little book, to becoming something so much more. And I knew that that's what I really needed to speak about. So we started, I say we, it was me. I really started just kind of collecting some ideas over the course of the year, because when I had finished writing this book came out February 13th, 2013. And I thought, you know what? Before the end of the year, before the end of 2013, I was going to write that next book, because if I didn't do it by the end of that year, odds were really good I was never really going to write it, because I know myself. I get, there's lots going on. I get lots of ideas, and if this is something I really want to do, I need to own it. And of course, I said that to myself. I put this book out there. I was super excited, and then I completely forgot all about it. Because I get busy and life happens and other things happen, and it's really hard to be able to stay focused all the time, or at least for me it is. So as I started working, these are your guys' questions, by the way. I have my notes on that I want to talk about. When I started thinking about, okay, if I'm going to execute this vision, and I want to get clear on creating a book, I had lots of ideas, and I mean lots of ideas, for what could go into that next book. There was a lot that I could say to people about so many aspects of drawing forth visual conversations, but we can talk about it in workplace applications, and we can talk about it from a cognitive science perspective. Oh, but we could also talk about it from agile development, and I just had so many things that I could say. And I realized, you know what, that's not going to allow me to execute any sort of a vision for my book, because I don't really have a vision for my book. I just know I want to write one. And it's kind of like when people are selling something, and you ask them, oh, so who is your ideal customer? And they say, oh, everybody's my ideal customer. Well, if everybody's your ideal customer, then you're not really reaching anybody, because you need to get clear on who you're reaching and what you're focusing on. So some of the things that helped me stay on track, and this is a message that comes, or a question that comes from Sarah, what are some of the ways to stay on track with your book's core message and avoid trailing off into a black hole or a book about nothing? I mean, that's a perfect question, because that's exactly where I was. It was either going to be a book about nothing or a book about everything, because there was so much to say. But I came up with two things that really helped focus me in so that I can stay on track with that book's core message and the vision that I really wanted to execute. So let me show you those two on my little tablet here. So the first thing that I always would ask myself is, what's the book that you're really writing? And that's a really challenging question to answer, because it could be about everything. It could be about this, and it could be about that, and I want to talk about all of it at the same time. Well, your reader isn't going to want to read everything to say on this topic in one sitting. So what's the book that you are actually going to write? The thing that really helped me identify the book that I was actually writing was to think about the journey that I wanted the reader to go on. And where are they starting from? Where do I want to see them end up? And then I would kind of fill in between with the steps that took them from that starting place, or that starting state, to that ending state. So the thing that really helped shape that for me is this little, I mean, it's so simple. I would draw one of these. Little dude, this is where they are now. This is where they are after. They're going to go on a journey reading this book. So now they might be thinking, I don't know if I'm really quite willing to try this out. I mean, I'm curious, but I'm nervous. I don't know if I want to pick up that pen and, draw out ideas, but I really kind of would like to. There's something very magnetic about this for them. Oh, I really want to be able to do this stuff, but I have some fears and some other things. So if that's where they are now, what do I want them to feel like at the end of reading this book? Well, I want them to feel like, yeah, I could do this. I'm confident. I'm equipped. I've got the skills. I've got some practice. And I'm ready to go out there and try my stuff. Even if it's just, I'm ready to play. I'm ready to play with this stuff. So if this is where I want my reader to go, and this is where I think they're starting from, what are the pieces that need to come into place to take them on this journey? What order do those pieces need to go into? And then you can unpack them into different pieces of content. So let me show you really quick. Hold on. Let me show you the one I did for Draw Forth, so it'll give you a better idea of what we're talking about here. So hang on. Dun, 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 dun. Here we go. Okay. This was the drawing that really allowed me to get clear on what the heck I was writing in the first place, because I was writing 8,000 different books at the same time, and I couldn't latch onto the core message, that Sarah was asking about. So I thought about, okay, where is my reader starting? They're a little, yeah, I don't know about this. I wanted to get them to a place where they went from, I don't know about this whole like drawing in front of people thing, to, woohoo, sure I can do this. So I ended up doing some sticky note brainstorming on the big picture pieces. What are the things that are going to need to come into play on this journey? And I did them on Post-it notes at first so I could move them around. I might have, yeah, here we go. So like this page. So started off here. I want to get them here. First I need to get them open to the possibilities. And from there, then hopefully they'll believe that they can draw good enough. And then from there, I'm going to need to teach them a visual language, and then teach them how to have visual conversations, and then get fluent in that. And when I thought of them, it was just dumping them all into the center, and then I could figure out the logical progression as I moved forward. Once I got those pieces into place, so I don't know, well, okay, let's explore the possibilities. Why are those important? Okay, now I believe I can draw good enough. Okay, I can see the possibilities. I believe I can do this. Now I've got a visual language and some syntax I can use to actually share ideas with these things. I can hold my own in a visual conversation. And hey, you know what? I've got different ways to approach these different scenarios that I might run into, and at least get me, grounded as a starting place. And then for each of these, you can see I started to break out, the possibilities, why, with the value and the results, communication, team, some brain stuff. These are the things that I would want to start talking about. I believe I can draw good enough. What needs to come into place, or what needs to fall into place for this person to believe that? Well, they're going to need to be able to give themselves permission. They're going to need to address their inner critic. They're going to need to see some value and benefit to this belief system. Okay, now we want to give them a visual language so they can actually start communicating. In order to do that, okay, well then let's talk about letters and words and sentences and what needs to go in to build that for my reader. From there, okay, I can hold my own in a visual conversation. What does that mean? What is that going to take? Oh, they're going to need to know how to listen. They're going to need to know how to reflect. They're going to need to know how to make meaning. And then, oh, now I've got ways to attach some, to approach some scenarios. Oh, okay, so that's kind of looking at different ways to, to approach different conversations. So this is the arc. Now my core message is starting to get clear. You can hold a visual conversation. I could talk about all sorts of different things here, but if what I want to do is keep my reader going across that path and that journey, now I've got a framework that helps me know whether or not I'm staying on course, right? Because I've kind of mapped out what I want my reader to experience and what I want my reader to receive as a result of this. So this thing comes up a lot for me. Where are they now? Where do they want to go? How do we need to get them where they're going to, where we want them to go? So hopefully that is that actually touches on something that Roberta asked. What are some of the best visual processes for writing your book? This one was huge. This simple little drawing was huge. Anytime I was starting to feel like I was getting off track, I would go back to that original drawing and look at that arc. Is what I'm talking about feeding into that arc, or is it taking it off course? If I'm staying true, then I know I'm doing a pretty good job there. So that's staying on track with your core message and what the book is that you're actually writing. The second piece to this is, you need to know the book that you're writing, but you also need to know who you're writing for. Writing for, question mark. Because just as that salesperson who said, hey, everybody's my client, everybody's my potential customer, when they take that approach, they end up not really reaching anybody because it's so scattered and so thin. The same thing happens with your book. And so the best thing that I could do for making sure that I wasn't going into a book about nothing or a book about everything that nobody would ever read is to figure out who is it that I'm actually writing this thing for. And an empathy map is a great way to dive in. Oops, no, there we go. It's a great way to understand who that person is. And I'm sure a lot of you already know that the empathy map is when you get into a specific person's head, a persona's head, and you see what, you think about their day and what is it that they see, what is it that they say, what is it that they hear, what is it that they think, etc. during the course of their day. And getting a better understanding of what your reader experiences will help you create a book that better meets their needs. So, hold on. Sorry, ladies, I hope this is okay. But when I thought about who I was writing this book for, there were really three people that came to mind. And I identified 3 different types of readers that I was really writing for. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to write about 3 specific people. I got into some demographics, just describing who they are, upper middle management, industry, what they're like, and then the one statement that really kind of came to mind for why I thought they would be reading this book. And I was pulling this from things that people have actually said. So, oh, I love what you do. I wish I could do this too. Or, oh, yeah, you know what? I can see, this person's a little more pragmatic, but they want to be able to bring in the fun. This person is really kind of industry focused, and so they need to, show me how to do this so I can communicate better. I had these 3 people in mind as I wrote my book. And writing for a specific person instead of everybody makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference because instead of thinking of all things that you're going to have to think of saying, there are things that you're going to want to tell this one person. And so it helps to structure and shape that reader's journey. If I think about, where is that page again? Ah, I just moved it. Oh well. If I think about that journey that my reader is going to go on back here, and this is anyone, it's really hard for me to lock in on who this person is. But if this is someone very specific that I can connect with, and I think I can picture their face when I think about them, and they're awesome, and they make me smile just thinking about them. And hey, you know what? There are all these things that I want to be able to say to you. Write to that person. Write to that person when you're writing your book. Don't write it for just anyone. Write it for the one person that you really want to be able to share your message with, because that's going to really give it the power. Let's see. All right. We have tons more to talk about, and the clock is ticking. So if I don't get to everybody's questions, what I'll do is I will make sure to answer them on social media and just kind of trickle them out so that everyone will be able to, to get the insights and stuff. But let's move on to process, because now that we're talking about who we're writing this book for and the journey that we want them to go on as a reader, how do you write it? That's the million-dollar question, right? Now that you have this vision of what you want to do, how do you actually start putting a process together that will support that vision becoming a reality? So let's go to a new page. All right, and so there are tons of questions on this. How to create, how to organize the process and create an outline. Leap into Fashion was asking about that. Here we go. Other questions. Are there any drawbacks? No pun intended. To writing a book out of order, write about what is most inspiring first. What factors should be kept in mind when determining the content covered in the book. Let's see. How was it? How did you manage to keep up with the rest of your work? That's coming from Florence. Process and timing. How to get organized so that you don't lose focus and motivation and don't move in circles. That's coming from Peter. Strategy, organization, process, time frame, publishing from Patty Bell. Process, what do you do when you feel a lack of motivation to continue? Okay, so I'm going to answer all of those in a story, basically. So let's just kind of walk you through my process for writing this book. So let's see if I can share my entire screen with you guys. Oh, I hope so. Share. Oh my, that's kind of cool. Okay, I hope you can see this. All right. The process for writing this book, here, let's, sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit because I'm thinking about where I want to start with this. Do, do, do. Stop sharing. Okay. Technology. Woohoo! The process that I want to be able to share with you for this book, it took, let's say, 9 months from the time that I thought, yeah, you know what, I need to start this book, to the time that I decided, oh crap, it's the end of the year, I better get going or I'm never going to write it, right? So, where are you guys? I've lost you. No. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Crap. 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 All right. Well, we'll fake it. Took 9 months to get to the point where I wanted to be able to get this thing done. And I realized at the end of December that, oh crap, I didn't actually write a book. I got busy and I was doing other things. So I thought, okay, I'm going to look at the end of the year. And there, I did that map of where I want someone to start, where I want them to end, and the pieces of the journey. I'm nervous because I don't see you guys. Wait a minute. Where are you? Ah! Okay, well, keep going. I cleared my calendar for the last 9 days of the year. And after doing that map, because I saw that there were basically 9 pieces of this book that I needed to write, I cleared my calendar and I wrote a piece every day to the end of the year. So we're talking about waking up, going to the coffee house, because I write better at a coffee house, and I met up with a writing buddy. We'd sit head to head with each other and talk about, okay, what are we going to be doing today? Well, today I'm going to be focusing on the section that I can write the most easily, which was not the first section. Sarah, you were asking this question: is it okay to bounce around? I had to start with chapter 3, which was the section on tools and materials. It was the easiest way to get into the book. And so that's where I started. And I wrote until that one was done. And then I left for the day. And then I came back the next day and realized, okay, I've got these pieces left. What needs to get written next? And I would go and just write each section all the way through. And by New Year's Eve, I actually had a book. Well, a book. I had a completed manuscript. I had pieces of a book. So it took 9 days. It took 9 months to think about, oh, what am I going to do? It took 9 days to actually sit down and write it, uninterrupted. Christmas Day, I spent it at the coffee house writing. New Year's Eve, I spent it at the coffee house writing. And by the time I turned off my computer, I could go to that New Year's Eve party with a clear conscience. So from there, it took a whole other 9 months to get it from a book manuscript, where it was pieces of a book, to an actual book that read like a book, that felt like a book, that I can hold and be really proud of. And so it started off with, you see this binder? It's like a ton of stuff, right? And this started off as a keynote presentation, or like a PowerPoint slide deck, where I did one idea per page, and I printed it all out for posterity because I'm kind of like that. But I would focus on one thing per page, one thing per slide, and I started using the slide deck as large index cards for what I was putting together for the book. And then from there, I started going into a program called Scrivener, and Scrivener would allow me to start organizing those pieces within a program where I could write and I can move things around, and it worked out really well. Then by the 31st, I had this. This was the first manuscript. You see how big that is? Okay. You see how big that is? That's the finished book. So it took pounds and pounds and pounds of editing and iteration to go from this first draft to this guy. So I hired an editor to work with me. Best thing I could ever have done, get an editor to work with you. Because they're going to do 4 different levels of edit. Well, at least my editor did 4 different levels of editing with me. She did a big picture edit where I gave her those first pieces and said, I have pieces of a book, but it doesn't feel like a completed book. And so we worked together, and she refined the, she didn't go in sentence by sentence or paragraph by paragraph. She went for a big picture flow of what's being discussed. And then we got it, a little bit smaller. And this is printed on double-sided paper. But then started going in and making different kinds of edits from there. So instead of big picture, now we started drawing into more of a paragraph level where how's the flow going for what I'm trying to say. And from there, it whittles it down again. And so now we have this one that has, fewer pages. And it's not really a drawing process at this point. It's going back to that original, where's the person, where do we want them to be, and what's that journey that we want them to go on. The drawing really was more me playing with different ideas for covers every time I would print it out. But, so we would just keep refining and refining and refining. And this process took months, because I could write my book the last 9 days of the year. I could clear my calendar because nobody's working that time of year. However, my business season starts back up in January. So instead of having all this time to focus exclusively on the book, I had to start doing it along with everything else. And that becomes really challenging when you're traveling, when you are preparing for multiple projects at the same time, and you have to start carving out space for your own projects to keep moving forward. So when you can partner with an editor or with some sort of team who can help you continue to refine your book, even when you have to do other things, that is the best gift you can give yourself, because you can continue to make progress. And so we would refine, I'd give it to beta readers, and they would do their notes on what they liked and what they didn't like, and you get all that feedback, and it's this iterative process where you keep just knocking it down and knocking it down and knocking it down until you have a draft that actually feels like it's your book. And you can say, you know what, the content is basically done. Let's move into copy editing now. So we've gone from that big picture edit to a sentence level edit just for flow, and we're polishing up those sentences and paragraphs. Now we're checking to make sure that everything is spot on. Once we got the manuscript at a point where, yeah, you know what, this is it, this feels good, then the designer, I hired a design team to do the interior layout and the cover. So I had to be able to give them a final manuscript for them to start laying out. I gave them an earlier version of a manuscript at first, and that became a little problematic because you couldn't, they would start laying things out, but I was still ripping copy apart, because as I was going through at that, I know it's my last polish, so I'm going through the book and I'm like, oh, you know what, yeah, I don't want this part anymore, we're going to pull that, sorry. Oh, wait, but they're laying out the book. So the tighter your copy can be when you give it to your designer, the faster they can get stuff done for you. So do them and yourself a favor and get your copy as tight as it can be. So once we were in design, something that I realized was I knew where I wanted illustrations to go in my book, but I couldn't say for sure what those illustrations were because the copy wasn't 100%, you know what I mean? So I could look and feel like, well, you know, maybe it's going to be like this, but not really sure. So I found that it was really hard to actually draw the illustrations until the copy was nailed. But what I could do is put in placeholders for where I wanted images. So, for example, you can see that there are, you know, like image placeholder, blah, 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 and a description of what the placeholder image is going to contain. So I had broad notes through those placeholder notations throughout my manuscript for what I wanted to draw, but I didn't have to worry about how to draw it. Something that I changed as we moved into the absolute final version is I started numbering them by chapter. So image placeholder 10.1 would be the image placeholder for chapter 10, first image. And so then I could just draw images, mark the numbers, name them with the numbers, and the design team could just plug those images in. So these are the illustrations for Draw Forth. All of those illustrations. I did them on paper because I'm an analog kind of gal. And, you know, if I look at the images, I'm looking for, here we go. So looking at different images that we're using in the book, here's one, and on the back, it's 908. So chapter 9, it's the 8th image. That's going to be showing up in the book. But then I thought, well, you know what? There's this one too. Kind of like this one. So you know what? I'll do both of them. I'll tag them both as 908 so I can keep my analog drawings organized and I keep them in chapter and sequential order. And the illustration tag in the manuscript goes that order too. So it becomes really easy for the designers to pull everything together. And wow, I am not going to get through all these questions in 45 minutes, am I? Dang. Okay. Dang. So much to tell you guys. This could have been a 3-hour call easily. Okay. So let's hit content questions really quick because there were a couple of those. Let's see. How do you limit subjects to one book and decide which topic goes to this one and which topic goes to the second or the third? So that's coming from Claudia. And then Peter is asking if he's in the process of writing a free guide and a book. And the problem is that I get stuck with what, you know, the decision of what part should I carve up for the guide when I'm writing the book. And honestly, that all comes back to the journey that you want to take your reader on. You know this guy? It all comes back to this. Because if your guide is going to get someone from, I can't draw, to, you know what, it's okay to draw, then what are the steps that need to take that person there? And that's what that book focuses on. You could spend 8 hours talking about cognitive neuroscience, but if it doesn't get your reader where it needs to go, then it's a problem. So the other thing is to know who your reader is. And this will lead into one of my biggest lessons learned. When you know who your reader is and what they need from you, it helps you tailor your offering. And this is probably the biggest, or it leads to the biggest lesson that I learned writing my book. I always thought, I read really quickly, and I always thought that a book had to be huge if it was a real book. And so when I got my galley back, and it was all laid out, and it was this big, I cried. I literally cried because it didn't match my view of what a book should be. And, I had, my mentor who was talking me through this entire process. Another lesson learned, work with a mentor to guide you through this. It's a godsend, really is. But she was talking to me about, well, who's your reader again? Well, they're lay people, but they're like in management and executive roles. And then she's like, well, but would they have time to read a really big book? Well, probably not. Would they approach a really big book? Well, they probably need something bigger. Something that's more manageable for them to get through and easy to use. And that's what this book ended up being. So the biggest lesson that I learned for writing a book was to get over my own expectations of what this thing had to look like, and know that your book is going to get a life of its own. And so my book happened to be 131 pages long, which at first made me cry horribly. But now I understand that it's not about how big your book is, but if it's 131 pages, they're the right pages, and so it's good. And so now I love my book. I'm so happy with it, and it's the right size, and that means people will actually read it, and they are. So that's super exciting to me. Anyway, I know our time is over. I have tons more questions that you guys were asking. I will put out answers on social media over the course of the next few days, probably. This video should be getting uploaded and shared with folks so that you can get all sorts of good information out of it. I hope the technology worked and that it recorded the entire thing, please. And yeah. So thank you for being here. We'll do this again on February 4th, probably. And if there are topics that you would like to explore for drawing forth the best in yourself and others, send them over to me at Jeannel at JeannelKing.com. You can always tweet me at JeannelKing. And thank you so much for being here. I'm so honored. And thank you. Have a wonderful day. Okay, bye. You can always tweet me at Jeannel King. And thank you so much for being here. I'm so honored. And thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye. Yeah. No, stop it. Ah! Technology, I am telling you, I cannot find where to turn this thing off. So there's a reason why I work with markers and paper. That's all I have to say. Thanks, guys.